Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to On Screen with Dee Harris. And once again, back on the show, it's the lovely world traveler, Keita Explorer. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me back. It's been
Yeah,
like
man.
a while.
It's hard to believe it's been almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
I believe we recorded your initial episode back in, I believe, December of 2018. I put it out like 2 months later, but yeah, man, it's been a while. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Well, first things first, Happy New Year. Hope you had a great Christmas and holiday season. And much blessings to you and your family.
Yeah, same to you. I'm glad I was able to go up to Cleveland to see my family, so that was good.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures you took. Now, was that downtown?
Yeah, Public Square.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Now, like I said before, we basically had you on the show 2 years ago, but it's been a lot going on, especially in the world around us now. Like luckily we just escaped 2020. But
Yes.
what have you been up to in a time since then?
Oh, wow. So, 2019 was filled with travel. I started I got my LLC for my photography business at the beginning of 2019.
Excellent.
So that was a whole thing. And then I started doing Airbnb experiences here in Atlanta. So if someone comes, local people too, if someone comes to Atlanta, they can book an Airbnb experience and then do a photo shoot with me at some local places. I was doing event photography, still traveling the world, still working full time. And then 2020 started. Things started out normal. And then it went downhill pretty quickly because at the end of January is pretty rough. And then COVID happened mid-March, and we're still in a pandemic, unfortunately. So a lot of things had to change. Obviously, like doing event photography and Airbnb experiences, that kind of shifted. I had to change a lot of things with photography in the past year, change the way I travel. It's definitely been some shifting going on in 2020 for sure.
Yeah, well, I've been referring to it with some of my friends, 2020 being a global bastard. That's pretty much what that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, it's affected us all in many, many different ways, myself included. However, what are some other ways, like as far as other endeavors and other things you've been into, has COVID, caused you to change around a lot?
Yeah, so I have a lot of different aspects in life. So one, I have my full-time job, where up until March 13th, we were still going to the office. And then at the end of that day, they're like, I already felt it was coming. So I went and stocked up on groceries the day before, because I was like, these people crazy. I need to buy my essentials. But at the end of the day, on the 13th, they're like, oh, take your stuff home. We're going to work from home for 2 weeks. It's now January 1st, 2021, and we're still working from home. So that was, in a way, it sucks because I don't get to see anyone on a daily basis, but I also love it because I don't have to commute. Like the commute, I was in traffic for 2 hours a day and it was very stressful for me. So I don't have to do that anymore. And then it gives me more time to work on things like just getting exercise in or working on my personal creative projects, because I'm not in traffic as much or tired. So that was a good thing. As for my photography business, the beginning of the year, it started out cool. I had Airbnb experiences up until I think March 20th. And then Airbnb shut down experiences. It did not reopen experiences in Atlanta until the end of October. So that meant I wasn't really doing much. And I was doing event photography, events where that was out of the question, right? So I took that time, I took classes starting to learn how to do real estate photography and product photography, because those are things where you don't have to necessarily be around people, because we don't know how long this is going to last. So I started doing that. And I've really been working on the product photography first, because there's more things you can do. Like real estate, I would have to start going around to friends' houses and stuff.
Yeah.
And that gets a little funny. So I started working on that first and like trying to build up my portfolio. That's still in the making. So that was one thing I started doing. And then I also applied for a grant at locally for my business due to COVID, and I actually won it. The first time I ever applied for a grant and wrote something up
Wow. Well,
and won it.
congratulations on that.
Thank you. So that was stressful to make sure I win, but yeah, I got that. So that was helpful to actually pay for more resources like PP&E for when I go back and start doing photo shoots, and actually paying for the courses that's not coming out of my pocket and making a deficit in my business. So that was very helpful. So later in the year, things start, I mean, they have photography's not back up to 100% to where it was. I have done an event, and actually I've been kind of like weary of events because, you know, Georgia's been open since we only had 2 weeks of lockdown, and there's not really a lot of procedures in place, but people are just doing whatever. And I'm like, yo, I'm not trying to get anything. So I've been kind of weary about doing events because people are kind of reckless down here. But I have done some, and I have been back at Airbnb experiences. And then travel, yeah, that sucked because, you know, that just the world shut down. Couldn't really
Yeah.
do.
Well, how's that like? I'm pretty sure it's been one of those eye-rolling moments every time you get ready to go somewhere. But how has that exactly affected your travels? I mean, you're key to the explorer. You can't explore
Yeah,
if you can't travel, right?
that's right. So funny story at the beginning, not funny. It was very frustrating and depressing actually. But the day, maybe 2 days after the president shut down the borders to Europe, that's when I was actually supposed to be going to Europe. And I felt that I already knew the trip wasn't going to happen because things were just it was just spiraling out of control. And I was like, I tried to get my money back before that happened. But they're like, oh, your flight hasn't been canceled yet. And I'm like, great. Then that announcement came. I was on the phone until I even called the number in Spain, like not the 1-800 number, their number plus 34, whatever it is, trying to get in touch with someone. And I couldn't get in touch with anyone. Eventually I had to file claims with my credit card and everything. And it took 2 or 3 months to get all of my money back from that trip. So that was very frustrating. I don't play with my money.
I heard that.
Yeah. So, but that was very depressing because you're like looking forward to this trip, and then things just started like exploding out of your control. Right. So then things were kind of like, you know, on shutdown. My birthday actually happened in April. So that was depressing. So I actually I went out and did like photo shoots of Atlanta with no traffic and stuff. So that was kind of like an exploration. I actually went to the airport and took photos there, just stuff like that. And then eventually I was like, okay, I have to get out of here, out of the house, do something. So I started doing things locally. So I would go to like, there's a lot of stuff to do here that I just never did before. So I went to like some local parks, there's a bamboo forest here. Didn't know that existed until this year. So I just started doing things like that. And then eventually I was like, yep, I'm booking a plane ticket. I'm gone. So September, I booked a flight to Vegas, and I rented a car and I did a road trip out west. Solo road trip, got to take my time, went to the Grand Canyon, went to Zion National Park, and just like, you're outdoors. So it's not like as risky as being, you know, in a Vegas nightclub or whatever. So I did that. And then I finally took my first international trip right before Thanksgiving. So I went to Bermuda. That was very an anxious driven trip before going, but I went, had a good time, and now we're here. Hopefully more travel in 2021.
Yeah, and I happened to look at, I watch all your videos too. So I was checking out your Bermuda video. Speaking of that, how is the COVID protocols in Bermuda and other places you travel within the last year? How is that compared to, what's going on back home?
Yeah, so the United States makes me very frustrated. When I went to Bermuda and came back in the country, I was just very disgusted because we have nothing in place. There is no procedures in the US. Flying to Bermuda, and every country has like their different tweaks or whatever for coming into the country. And then there are some countries like Mexico that's just living a good life like the United States. They don't really have procedures either. But going to Bermuda, you have to get, and it could have changed because things change rapidly with COVID. It could have changed a little bit since then. But when I went in November, you had to get a negative PCR COVID test within 7 days before going. You had to apply for a travel authorization form within 3 days of going. You had to take a test. Oh, and Delta checked it, and they kind of like looked at me like, "This isn't with in 3 days." I'm like, the Bermuda government's website says 7 days, lady. Do not try to make me get on this flight. Not today. And then you had to stand. You couldn't check in online or anything. You had to go stand in the long, like the reject line where people don't have their life together. You had to stand in that line to get on the
Oh
get
boy.
in at the airport. And then when I was flying there, like I don't play. I had on a mask. I had on I was covered. Even had a face shield and everything. And then when you land in Bermuda, you get off the plane, and public health officials there actually meet you as soon as you get off the plane. So you have people in hazmat suits are greeting you getting off the airplane, which I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And that's something like you wish you could take a video, but there's no videos allowed in there because you're still like in customs or whatever. So as soon as you get there, they take your temperature and it's not high. So they're like, okay, go to that window. You go to the window there, they check your COVID test, and then they ask you where you're sitting on the plane. So I'm like, okay, I was sitting in whatever seat. And they ask you that multiple times. You go through customs like normal. Then they take you to a tent and get a COVID test there. Then you have to quarantine in wherever you're staying. So in my case, a hotel. You have to quarantine in the hotel up until you get your negative COVID test. If it's positive, I don't know what the procedure is because I was like, I know I better not be positive because I have quarantined myself for whatever amount of days.
And on top of that, you need to get back home eventually too.
Right, because like I do remember seeing on the form, because they give you a paper when you get there that it says if you test positive, I think like you have to quarantine for a certain amount of days because I don't think you can reboard your flight. Like if you're like, because I only stayed for 4 days, so I think I wouldn't have been able to get back on my flight if I was positive, come back to the U.S. But so you quarantine in the hotel, and the hotel I stayed at, they were serious. You got a key card, and you used it one time. And then you couldn't get back in. Like, so if you left and broke quarantine, you wouldn't be able to get back into your hotel room without reporting to the front desk, and then you'll get like in government trouble or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. So then when you get your negative test back from the government, they would you send it to the hotel, and then they would give you like a real key. And it took about, I think, like maybe 10 hours to get my results back, but that was like in the middle of the night. So I was like, I'm sleeping in. I'm not worrying about this tonight. So yeah, they're definitely on it, and you have to take your temperature twice a day, wear a mask at all times and stuff. So they're really on it. I know their cases have went up. It seems like winter is just bad for COVID worldwide. So their cases have went up a little bit, but as soon as they started going up, they're like, nope. They started shutting things down again. They're like, we're not doing this. So they're a little more proactive, whereas we're like reactive or not doing anything at all in the U.S., which is very frustrating, to say the least.
So what are some precautions and, safety measures people who still want to travel, you got people who just can't seem to sit their butts down.
Yeah.
What are some steps they can take to stay safe and still enjoy travel in the world?
Yeah, so I'm glad you had to ask that because some people, I mean, I've traveled or whatever, but some people are not traveling responsibly, or there's other people out there travel shaming people for traveling. So I feel like if you are responsible and like you quarantine before you go, make sure you have a negative test, even if that location doesn't require it. Because when I went on my road trip in the Western US, I still took a COVID test. So make sure you do that before you go. And if you're sick, don't go. I don't care if it's the flu or just a common cold, COVID, whatever, just don't go because you're just exposing something to other people. And that's just being respectful because you just don't know who you may come in contact with when you're traveling. If you have to travel and you don't really want to go on a plane, driving by car, maybe a little more safer if you don't have to make as many stops and you can control who you're around. If you're traveling by car or by plane, obviously I always have a mask. But for me, when I travel by car, I always have gloves for when I pump gas. And hand sanitizer, obviously.
Hmm.
But so I don't have to touch the gas pump and then get back in the car and all that stuff. So, but it's just more so just don't travel while you're sick. Keep up on good hygiene, wash your hands whenever you can, and have hand sanitizer when you can't, wear masks. And I mean, that's the basics. Just be responsible and don't go if you're sick.
And with that said, a lot of people travel by plane when they go somewhere
Mhm.
that they probably shouldn't be going right now, but they still want to travel. But you made a video basically covering the measures of how to stay safe on the airplanes.
Mhm.
What are some particular measures that you take to make sure that you're being as safe as possible while you're moving out and about?
Yeah, so when I'm on the plane, obviously, at least I think all airlines require you to wear a mask on board anyway. But I have a mask, I have a face shield. I also wear I make sure everything's covered except for my hands because I thought about wearing gloves at the airport. I was like, no, there's just too much going on. You got to be able to
Yeah.
grip and stuff. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But I keep covered. So like my arms are covered, my legs are covered. And then I have hand sanitizer, like somewhere I can easily grab it. And then if I want to eat or drink something in flight, I like obviously you have to pull your mask down. So I pull it down temporarily, but I keep the shield in front. So I still like can drink or whatever and still have slight protection. And then while I'm not drinking or eating, I put my mask right back on. And then before I sit down on the plane, I take wipes and I wipe every single thing I might touch. So the seat, the armrest, the TV, the window, the little air conditioning knobs, I wipe that all down before I sit down on the plane. So that's pretty much what I do. And then when I get home, well, if I get wherever I'm going, I change out of those airplane clothes immediately and take a shower as soon as possible. So hotel, home, wherever it is.